Well, Governor Dukakis, thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity and the pleasure to talk to you about institutional leadership in the public manager. One of the things that, often when we think of a governor is that you have a lot of responsibilities. When you think of your experience as a governor, what would be some of the moments that stick out to you as being exciting and the things that really gave you energy as a governor?
I don't remember a day when I was governor that I wasn't hopped up about something. But I think that goes back to what motivates you to go into public life in the first place. And I would apply these comments to public managers generally. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be an elected governor. You can be, people like me looking for good people, and I hope a lot of the folks that take this course are going to end up, unless if they're not there, end up as excellent public managers. They may not be elected, but same basic approach. I think you have to have a passion for the job. And if you really don't feel strongly about things, and if you don't think that good people working together can make a difference, you're in the wrong business. Now, my first term was a rocky first term, and in fact, I got thrown out of the place. And I was going through very much what Governor Patrick has been going through. A national recession. It's not your fault, caused by other things. And in the mid-'70s, we were in a recession that made this one look relatively mild, at least in New England, compared to what we were facing in the mid-'70s, because our entire industrial base had disappeared. Shoes, textiles, all that kind of stuff. High-tech hadn't really started coming into the picture. We had a state unemployment rate of over 12%, second highest in the country. In our older urban communities, it was depression stuff. It was in the 20s. And that was a real struggle. And having said, without qualifying it, as I should have, that I wasn't going to raise taxes, I discovered that the state deficit wasn't $100 million, it was $500 million. And this was on a $3.2 billion budget at the time. We had the highest state deficit proportionally in the country. And so I had to raise taxes. And that first year, in fact, the second year, was a real struggle. What happened, however, was that as a result of an economic recovery and some of the steps that we took, and they were tough, by my fourth year, unemployment had dropped from 12 to 5.5. And we were starting to do things and really getting into it. And I was feeling pretty good about things. 40 points ahead in the polls with 5 weeks to go, and I'm beaten in my own primary by a guy named Ed King. So I can't say that first term of mine was a wonderful ride. And in fact, I think Governor Patrick has done a better job in many ways of navigating through a similar kind of situation than I did. Second time around, beginning in the early 80s, when I beat the guy that beat me and then served for a couple of terms, it was different. I was a better governor. I was a better listener. I was a better coalition builder. A lot of things that I hadn't done very well in my first term. But in those last 2 terms, I can't think of a day that I didn't go home feeling some sense of satisfaction. That in some way we had done something to improve the human condition. And in point of fact, I think the state really kind of came alive in the 80s and began to dig itself out of this huge hole of ours. So.
Wow. That's interesting. You mentioned going home, and oftentimes for many individuals in leadership, you often take your issues and problems home.
Yeah.
What role did your family serve in supporting you as governor, or even just maybe talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, it was big. It was big. I mean, family to me is very important. But Kitty and I, before we were married, and I made sure she knew what she was getting into, because she stood in front of a polling place for 13 hours for me.
Wow. During
my first primary campaign in Brookline. And it was a tough polling place. When I came out of there with a decisive majority, I figured, well, she was a girl for me. But in fairness, she was not apolitical when I met her. I mean, she'd been a student senator at Penn State. She'd been a leader at Brookline High School, and she was really into this stuff. I mean, she was very interested. And I can't imagine being in active public life with a spouse that doesn't feel that way. I mean, life has to be uncomfortable. We made we agreed on two basic rules, what we live with throughout my political career, with the obvious exception of the presidential campaign. One was that dinner was home at 6 o'clock at night. No exceptions, scheduled. I would leave the State House at 5:30, walk down the Park Street subway, take the streetcar home. I would do things in the evening, but 6 to 7:30 was family time. And, you know, I wasn't doing that just for my family. It was important to me to break the day, to have an opportunity to spend time with Kitty and the kids, and just, you know, kind of get out of what I was doing and stuff. Secondly, we were pretty selective about evenings. I mean, I would do maybe 3 evenings a week out, but Kitty taught modern dance at Lesley College, and her teaching nights were Tuesdays and Thursdays. On those nights I was home. One of us was home every night of the week, except Saturday, with the kids. And then Sunday was family day, no politics, with 3 exceptions: the St. Patrick's Day Parade in South Boston, Greek Independence Day, and Combined Jewish Philanthropy Super Sunday. And on those 3 weeks, I took Saturday off. But Sunday was family day, no politics, none of that kind of stuff. And I meant it. So, you know, folks in a way had to kind of work around this schedule, and yet people were very supportive of this. I mean, when my scheduling folks would say, you know, he's home for dinner, so they say, oh, okay, or, you know, Sunday's family day, you know, the whole 7/24 thing is crazy anyway. I don't care what you do, but I used to say, look, if we can't run this state with a busy 6-day week, then there's something the matter with us. So we're terrible managers. So I'd kind of wrap up Saturday at around 3:30, 4:30 in the afternoon. And that was it until Monday morning. And those breaks, both for dinner and on Sunday, were very important to me and to my family. And you know, you can be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but if you got a family that's just kind of falling apart around you, I mean, it's got to be brutal. And fortunately, we never had that. We've got 3 terrific kids now, 8 grandkids.
Wow.
But they're the single most important factor in my life, obviously.
Wow.
And Kitty has been, you know, terrific and very much a partner in every sense of the word on this. But I recommend those 2 rules to public managers. And I say to them over and over again, don't let anybody tell you can't do that. Because you can't, but you got to be disciplined. And you can't start carving exceptions and all of this stuff. So if somebody wanted, for example, when I was governor, if somebody wanted me to speak someplace, my schedule would say, fortunately, it's a relatively small state. Could you do this in Texas? It'd be difficult. But you do fly around a lot there as opposed to driving by car. But my schedules would just say, yeah, I'll be happy to do it, but when are you going to put the coffee on? He'll be there then, and then he'll speak. And so I'd arrive usually about the time they were clearing the dishes off. And in the meantime, I had my time with my family.
Wow.
And it always charged me up. I mean, it was always, you know, I don't have to tell you, I mean, kids are worth at least 25 laughs every dinner. But I recommend those 2 rules to public managers. In fact, I'd recommend them to folks in the private sector, to tell you the truth.
Wow.
And I was kind of a fanatic about it. Even during campaigns, it wasn't Sunday, but Friday was my day off until 6. I'd take Tuesday night, Friday during the day. Even during campaigns, I mean, it was important to take that time. And I used to say to my folks, I don't want to see you around here on Sunday. I mean, you're not winning any brownie points with me working on Sunday. Get out of here. Go back to your families, go back to what you do. And, you know, unless the state's maximum security prison is blowing up or something, I mean, or we have the blizzard of the century or whatever that is, you know, as we did in '78. I don't want to see you around here. I want you out of here, and I want you, you know, getting your personal time away from here.
So as governor, who were some of the people that you surrounded yourself with? Because we often hear, you know, and see, you know, politicians and leaders in general surround themselves with very good people. Who were a handful of guys that you surrounded
Well, you know,
yourself
in the course we use Gordon Chase's book on how to manage the public sector, and I think at one point he says there are 3 very important aspects to managing: people, people, and people. I mean, the folks that you recruit, select, appoint to serve you. And again, this is true at every level of public management. I remember Fred Salvucci was my Secretary of Transportation. He's just a terrific guy. But he had an uncanny eye for talent in the transportation field. I mean, it didn't take us 8 years to extend the Green Line 4 miles anywhere, you know. I mean, I was pretty insistent on it, but he just had an incredible collection of folks running those agencies of his who could deliver on this stuff. So it's true at every level. Now, how do you find good people? Well, a variety of ways. I was not a huge fan of national searches. For one thing, in a state like this, if you haven't got, I mean, we get talent up to our eyeballs. I mean, if you can't find good people to work for you in the state, in Massachusetts, there's something wrong with you. But it was more than that. I wanted people who were not only very good, but who weren't necessarily born here, but had come here and this was their home and this is where they put down their roots, because I wanted them to have a sense that this was very important to them as citizens, as parents, as well as public officials. And I wanted folks who, after they finished their tour of duty at the state level, would still be rocking around the place. Yeah. I mean, I did not want what I referred to as professional vagabonds, people that are here for 3 years, here for 2 years. And I wanted people, by the way, who at a minimum would give me a full 4 years. Because I don't think you can do this job. I mean, less than 4, and you probably need more. And on the whole, I think I picked fairly well, but as anybody knows who's responsible for a government with 65,000 employees, every once in a while, you're going to pick people who you think are going to be very good, and they turn out to be not so good. And other people who you're concerned about who turn out to be your stars. Yeah. And there's no way really of telling that, even though you do everything you possibly can to check qualifications and watch people in action and get a sense of... I did make one significant change between my first and second term. Second term around, I wouldn't pick anybody for a major position who hadn't had some experience in the public sector. I just didn't have very good luck with folks coming out of the private sector who had no experience in public life. And that's because the skills you need in public life are really quite different from what you need in the private sector. And one of the reasons that we teach this course, because there is a whole skill set there that's very different from what is expected of you in the private sector. And as a result of that, second time around, I think I had better administrations, not on an individual basis, because I had very good people working for me the first time around, and some of them came back with me the second time. But I just think it's very important that, at least if you're at that level, you are picking people for important positions who have some experience in the public sector. Otherwise, it can be very tough for them and for you.
You mentioned Gordon Chase and the course even. What is the purpose of this course, the institutional leadership of the public manager? What is the
purpose of the course? Is to give public managers or prospective public managers the kinds of skills they need to get things done and to be effective in the public sector. And as we all know, that's not easy. How do you deal with elected officials? What do you do with pesky constituencies that are always bothering you? How do you deal with the press? Now magnified with the internet and social media and all this kind of stuff. And how do you bring people together in a way that builds consensus around solutions? And these are all things which are absolutely essential if people are going to be effective in the public sector. They're not things you find usually. I'm not saying that some of these qualities and some of these abilities don't help in the private sector. And they're certainly needed in the nonprofit sector, which resembles the public side of things pretty closely. In fact, a number of my best people would kind of moved easily between the nonprofit and the public sector. But they're skills you have to have, and we don't teach them enough in this country. You know, we're doing all this quantitative stuff. I have no objection to that, although I think it may be somewhat excessive. I've often said that I can't remember a major challenge I faced as governor that was solved by calculus. But there we are. Look, I nearly flunked physics at Swarthmore College, so maybe there's a bias there. But it's these other skills that are critical if you're going to navigate through what is a very complicated political environment in which public managers work. And it's important to recognize that. And if you don't understand that you are in a complicated political environment, that, I was about to say, if you don't master it, I'm not sure any of us ever master it, but if you don't understand that and develop the skills you need to be effective in that environment, then you're going to fail. And this course fundamentally is an attempt to help people develop those skills. Be aware of them, develop them, practice them, and as a result, be effective public managers.